Hello, this is Demai. Recently, I have a friend asked me about InterCloud database management, and so I decided to build this simple example to show how a database can be migrated from one cloud vendor to another. And in today's example, we will use PostgreSQL as the database instance, and leverage the existing PostgreSQL on AWS and the AWS database migration service to migrate the same database to Alibaba Cloud. To access this example, there are several systems we need to set up. First, I like to set up the PostgreSQL RDS on Amazon. So this is a screenshot. As you can see, this is one of the PostgreSQL, and we set up on in the Eastern Pacific region. Actually, this is in Singapore, that showed in the endpoint. So this endpoint and also port will be useful to later on review how to access this database. And also for the setup, the public accessible is set to yes. And also there are several security groups we need to set up and open up the inbound and outbound routes there. Another system is we'll set up this one on Alibaba Cloud, which is also a PostgreSQL. And this is also set up in the Singapore region. And for this one, we'll have both, it's called the internal endpoint and the public endpoint. So particularly for the public endpoint, that make us be able to access this database instance through both the Amazon migration service and also from my own laptop. So this already set up and up and running. The public endpoint and also the public portal will be the port will be the one that we use to access it. This also AWS database migration service that I already set up, and I'm using this also set up as the same region, Singapore region, as the AWS PostgreSQL. There will be a public IP address have it set up there, and we will use this one. Actually, we need to use this public IP address to set up both the accessibility for Alibaba Cloud database and also AWS database. So myself set up a small environment on my own laptop. Certainly we need a PostgreSQL client just to manipulate that. I set up a Java development environment, have the Java CS compiler, and also I download one of the JDBC jar that used to access that. I write a application that simulate a loading kind of period for this database, and also have some sample data for that. And to have ability to access the Postgres instance on AWS, is basically I set up a special environment, specify the host, the port, my username, and the database I will access it. Certainly also the password. With the database instance created and set up, now we'll be able to access them. The upper right corner is the one that will use pSQL to access the AWS PostgreSQL. Okay, it's empty right now. It's brand new. And the lower one is the one that we access to Alibaba Cloud PostgreSQL. Same thing here. I'm going to create a table here. Okay, I have some cheat sheet. The table I want to create here is actually a mimic online retailer to mimic all the ordering transactions. Okay, it's done. If I can count it, certainly it should be empty, nothing there. Okay. Next, I will use my existing program to load some data there. First, it's some sample data. Connected and done. Okay, data here. Now let's go back to AWS's database management service. As mentioned before, we already created instance. Now we need to create the endpoint that identifies the source and the target of the database instance. Create one. So the source, well, since we are migrate from AWS to PostgreSQL, so we have it here. And since I'm using the same account, so have it here and PostgreSQL. Most of them are automatically set. So I will just input my password here. Okay. I will run a quick testing. Successful. Create the endpoint. Now we'll create the target. Well, this target, because this PostgreSQL is on Alibaba Cloud, so we cannot really just retrieve all the information. We have to manually put all that information. So let's put the name kind of identifier there. Let's add. You see? So the PostgreSQL, and we need to tell them it is actually a PostgreSQL. Just want to use the. So the server name actually is the endpoint name there. I need to grab that information. Well, we actually already have it here. The port number. Make sure the username and also the database name. Password. Same thing. Let's do testing here. Okay, running successfully. So we need to create it. We haven't created it yet. Okay. So we already created both the endpoint. We are almost there. The migration service underlines using the existing logical replication to replicate from the source database to the target database. So we have to twist a little bit parameter to enable that. So this document I'm showing is from the AWS document user guide. And particularly for using PostgreSQL as source, we need to enable these logical replication parameters and associate with other things. So I already did that, and just to show you where it is. This is my PostgreSQL. And go in there for the configuration to see the modification. So this is the place to modify the database instance. There are several different things. The one we are talking about is the database options, the parameter group. Here you can see we are actually using a specific parameter group. It is a copy of the default one and with a little bit twist. I'll show you where it is. So this is the RDS panel. Go to the parameter groups. This is the parameter group. For the replication, there are several of that. The logical replication we turn on as 1, which is true, and that is the one that enable us. Also, for recommendation, we're also looking at the timeout and set to 0. That already changed it. So this is set up. With everything set up, we are about to do the migration task. First, let's reiterate. So on this upper right corner, we have the AWS PostgreSQL. We already have the online retailer table set up and have 4 rows there. Let's assume we have 4 orders already set up there. At the lower one, we have the PostgreSQL on Alibaba Cloud. And the relation that the table haven't been created yet do not exist. We go back here to create a migration task. From use this replication instance. Source is AWS. Target. Target is the PostgreSQL on Alibaba Cloud. We'll do both migration existing data and doing a replication for ongoing change. This is a typical scenario that first we move the existing data, that's a for row we just show you, and also assuming the source database is still serve the application, that means some data will continue going to that table, and at the same time replicate to the target. Until at some point we satisfy with all the setup, all the data was migrated, we'll do a switch over. And once switch over finish, we will stop this migration task and point to our application to the target database. We keep everything at default. Here we need to set up the rule here. Percent as a wildcard, including everything. We'll have the task automatically started once it's created. Create successfully. And begin the job. Go back to this. We saw a utility table is created and also on the target. As we showed before, right? The table wasn't there yet, but now it have it. That means we move the schema from the source to the target. And let's look at where the data is here. Okay, data is moving over. That's great. Well, since we said ongoing replication, so let's mimic that. On my side, I already have this table, this application, and we will load more data here. This is really to a small one. I started. Connection is set up. We began to see something happen. And while it is the application, the Java application is loading the data into the source PostgreSQL on AWS. And then using the DMS service, the same data is migrate to the PostgreSQL instance on Alibaba Cloud. As you see, it's happening. We'll let the system running for a little bit. So to mimic the real-time a real-life situation. I will come back in a few minutes. We are back. Let's see how many orders already input here on the source and the target. We finish this simulation. So you can imagine since a whole day passed, there are some 800 orders was processed during the day. And during that time, the Java application is the one that's recording all the orders into our working database, which is the PostgreSQL on AWS, while the migration service migrating the same data from AWS to Alibaba Cloud. So we have the same number of the record there on both ends. So the next is we will should do some validation and assume everything okay. It's okay to switch over. That means migration is done. After confirm all the data is successfully migrated to the new database, it's time to do the cleanup. First, I go back to the migration task. Make sure we'll stop it so no more data will be migrated. And certainly you got to go back to change your application to point to the new database. Okay, the task is stopped. Now the task is stopped. We can go ahead, remove it. The task has been deleted successfully. So then we can remove the two endpoints. The two endpoints was deleted successfully. Eventually, if no more migration test is necessary, we can go ahead release the instance. Now the replication instance is released. We finish our migration. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.